So does this new Netflix limited drama based on and inspired by true events worth checking out? How were the performances? Does the show pull at the heartstrings? We're going to talk about that and much more. Series centers on four strangers in an immigration detention center in the Australian desert. An airline hostess escaping a suburban cult, an Afghan refugee fleeing persecution, a young Australian father escaping a dead-end job, and a bureaucrat caught up in a national scandal. When their lives intersect, they are pushed to the brink of sanity, yet unlikely and profound emotional connections are made amongst the group. Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot here today to talk about the new limited series Netflix show, Stateless. This show was on ABC in Australia earlier this year in March, I want to say, and recently Netflix bought the rights to have the show premiere globally, and I'm very excited to let you all know what I thought about this series in a non-spoiler review. Before we dive into it, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my new content. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up, really helps out the channel, and I really appreciate it. And last but not least, if and when you've seen this new limited series Stateless, let me know what you all thought about the show, about the story, about the characters, and just your overall thoughts, your pros, your cons, everything in the comments. Let's have a fun discussions down there. So as I always let you all know how I came about watching Stateless, as every month I do a movie and TV bucket list, and I always kind of comb through the new releases for the month. I saw the premise, I saw the trailer, I saw Cate Blanchett was on this show, which if you don't know, Cate Blanchett, I think she's one of the top 5 actresses of all time, top 3 working today for sure. I'm just a big fan of hers, and I was really excited to see her in another TV show this year, because if you guys don't know, she was on a show on FX on Hulu, Miss America, which I have to finish. I only watched the first 3 episodes and thought they were fantastic and reviewed it on this channel, but I'm a big fan of hers. So knowing the subject matter was another thing that really pulled me in. Not to get too political, because this isn't a political channel at all by any means, but when it comes to immigration and how the families are torn apart and how they just want to better themselves, better their family, get in a better situation, it's just tragic how a lot of the situations shake out, and how, you know, just kind of jumping ahead, but I love when a show kind of really gives you the facts. The show is based on true events, based on an actual detention center in Australia, and you know you're going to get those title cards at the end of the show where they give you the facts. And when you see those huge numbers, 70 million families are torn apart, and most of those families, most of those people in the detention center are kids, that just breaks me down to the core. So starting this off with the positive, this show does such a great job at earning your emotions. This show is very emotional. This is a 6-hour limited series show, and it was I finished it within the day. I saw it yesterday, and I throughout the day, doing work, doing this, that, and the other, so I couldn't watch it like 6 hours straight. But I finished something, and I finished an episode. Went back to something, finished episode. Did some streams, and finished the season late last night. So it was a tough binge, but not because it was a bad show by any means or the performances weren't good. It was just that it was a tough subject matter. I'll get into my negatives in a little bit. The first episode didn't really hit me in regards to just catching my attention completely. I like where the story was headed, but it didn't really hook me in. But by episode 2 and 3 and by the rest of the season, I was so invested in these characters. And I mentioned the emotional aspect of the show and you earning the emotions. The show does such a great job of laying out these situations. You're really looking at the show behind 4 different people's perspectives, and I love that we get, behind the scenes in regards to, we meet Jai Courtney's character, who is the deadbeat, kind of dead-end job. He's looking for a new opportunity. He's working for the detention center. So you're getting that perspective of, very interesting perspective, because as we know in America right now, when it comes to police brutality and the police force, there's certain jobs that I'm just like, I would never do, just because I don't know how I would be able to sleep at night. Someone that works at an immigration detention center, that has to be very morally, for some people I would imagine, not everyone, some people takes advantage of that power, as we see with certain characters in the show, and particularly played by Rachel House, who does a really great job of, you just love to hate this character. And she's always playing these type of roles, but I thought she was fantastic. But you see some people like Jai Courtney, who has a family, who's just trying to get some income and try to get a successful job where he can buy a house for his family, support his family, his kids and his wife. But then he sees what actually happens in these camps, and you're just watching his story, the moral aspect of his character of like, I want to do a job, I want to do good at my job, but the stuff that they're doing to these people, they're not treating them with human dignity and treating them like bad people, treating them like terrorists, treating them like terrible people. You're seeing him go through the show. So I love his perspective. I love the kind of the lead of this detention center, Claire, who's coming into the situation, trying to do her job, and she's seeing all the kind of cracks in the system. And then she has a moment where she kind of gets a little, mean-spirited in a sense to the people in the camp, and you're seeing that perspective. So I thought that was very interesting. And it's very interesting that you're seeing them trying to fight for survival. They're trying to save their job. They're trying to support their families, just like the people in those detention centers. And that's where the show really, really got me. You look at the characters. You have Sophie, played incredibly by Yvonne Strahovski. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but you may know her from Dexter, Chuck, but more recently in The Handmaid's Tale. Yvonne's story as Sophie, at first, like I had mentioned, the first episode didn't really catch my attention, but it was very fascinating to see her story. She is an Australian. She lives in Australia. She's a airplane hostess. She's having a life crisis. She's going through some mental issues, and she wants a new life. So seeing her, how she ended up in the detention center is very fascinating. She is our main character, our main focal point in the show, and I'll get to her a little bit later, but it was very fascinating to see her story unfold. Some moments worked for me, some moments didn't, and we'll talk about that later. But the performance by Yvonne was incredible as Sophie. You really get into her head, her psyche. By the end of this season, you see her go through the entire gamma of the highs, the lows, and everything in between. I thought that performance was incredible. Again, I had mentioned you have this character, Claire, who I thought did a great job. But going back to the other side of the fence, the people in the detention center, you have Sophie. The show's the heartbeat of the show to me, the emotional impact of the show to me came from a particular character and his family, Amir. That man's performance in this show, Amir is from Afghanistan. He wants a better life for his family because in Afghanistan, he's seeing kids getting murdered on the streets. He's seeing people getting raped and killed, and he wants his family to not be in those situations. So he goes across the border. He puts his family on a boat, and without getting too much into it, their families are split apart. And you're watching Amir trying to see his family again and struggle to see his family again. You see his interaction with his young daughter, and I won't get into it too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but Mia and Amir, that every time they were on screen, they just stole my heart because their story was so emotional, so heartbreaking, and the performance, again, the character Amir was my favorite character in a sense of just his performance in this show. I'm not too familiar with the actor, but I thought he did such an incredible job of portraying a father that wants better for his family and wants better for his kids and is willing to do anything to protect his family. I just love that story. And the young lady that played his daughter, Mia, was just incredible as well. But those two particular characters, again, whenever they were on screen and whenever we saw their story and we got the backstory and seeing everything that they're going through to kind of bring their family together was just, again, the heart and soul of the show for me personally. So you're getting their perspective, right? So I love that we get these two different POVs or two sets of POVs, but, and we're getting different supporting characters, the people in the detention center. You're getting a little bit of tidbits of their story, how they ended up there. You're meeting people, again, the other security guards that are in the detention center, the other head people, the other committee people, the people on the board. So it gives you all the different kind of perspectives on this detention center in Australia, which, again, is based on true events, and you're just watching everything go down in regards to riots, protesting. Again, you're learning about their stories. You're seeing how tragic and how they're looked at, right? Again, these refugees and these these immigrants in this detention center are looked at as terrorists, as threats, as bad people, as people with the moral compass that isn't there in the perspective of these people that run the detention center. And again, it kind of dives into the stereotypes. It dives into not knowing what they did to get there. And it sounds like they might have did bad things, but it's just the survival. And again, you're seeing these people that work for the detention center, they're willing to do anything to protect themselves, to protect their families, to survive, to have this job, to keep this job, to put food on their table, but they can't see why these people in the detention center did the same thing to protect their family. So the show just goes through a lot of emotions, guys. I think it was so well written. If there were any criticisms, I mentioned Yvonne was an incredible performance, but the whole Cate Blanchett, which again, my favorite actress, one of my favorite actors working today. You have her husband, played by Dominic West. So you have Gordon and Pat. They weren't. Cate Blanchett isn't in the show as much as I wanted her to, but that's fine because, again, you get a lot more in-depth insight into all the other characters. But that whole storyline, the cult angle, really didn't play that well to me. Again, Yvonne's performance really brought it to the forefront, but I wish they would have kind of evened that story out a little bit more. And then, again, that first episode wasn't my favorite because the pacing was a little bit off, and I had to kind of get used to the tone and kind of the what we were getting into. But this is a couple minor things that I had with some of the performance here and there throughout the season. And there were some backstories that they introduced some characters in the detention center, but you kind of get a little bit of their information that you don't really see them for much of the season. But little minor things. This show was really well done. I was, again, blown away by the emotional aspect, how I was just so connected to these characters. Again, this isn't a show that you can sit down and watch and binge in one sitting because it's not a feel-good type of show, but it is very educational and not like preachy. It doesn't say, it doesn't give you like a political angle in regards to propaganda or going a certain route. It's true, it's real, it's honest, it's raw, it's heartbreaking, it's emotional, it's incredible acted. The performances are incredible. The writing was really solid. This is a show I highly recommend you all check it out. Stateless on Netflix. Give it a shot. When you do, let me know what you all thought about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments for those that have seen the show. Again, your pros, your cons, and everything in between. Again, check out the show and let me know what you thought. So as that being said, wrapping this up, like, share, comment, subscribe. Make sure you keep an eye out for my review later today for Doom Patrol. We got 3 big hitters coming out tomorrow, as in we have Palm Springs on Hulu, we got Greyhound on Apple TV Plus, and we have The Old Guard on Netflix. So keep an eye out for those reviews this weekend. I have a watch along for Spider-Man Far From Home, as well as some other things coming for you all. So thank you for all the continued support. Hope you all are staying safe, and we'll see you in the next video.